I have been a ranger in the Blackmire National Forest for 41 years. In that time, I have seen things that defy explanation, things that have made me question everything I thought I knew about the natural world. But nothing in all my decades of service prepared me for what I discovered in the autumn of 1973. My name is Cornelius Ashworth, and I am recording this account because the truth must be known. There is a town in the heart of Blackmire Forest. It appears on no map. It exists in no census. No road leads to it, and no road leads away. The people who live there are not entirely people anymore, and I am one of the few outsiders who has seen it and survived to tell the tale. Blackmire National Forest stretches across nearly 600,000 acres of dense wilderness in the Pacific Northwest. The trees here are ancient, towering Douglas firs and western red cedars that have stood for 1,000 years or more. Their canopies are so thick that in some places, sunlight never reaches the forest floor. The undergrowth is a tangle of ferns, moss, and shadows, and the silence is so complete that you can hear your own heartbeat echoing in your ears. I have spent most of my adult life walking these woods, learning their secrets, respecting their dangers. I thought I knew every trail, every clearing, every hidden valley. I was wrong. The forest had been keeping secrets from me. It had been hiding an entire town. I first heard about the town from old Ezekiel Thorne, a ranger who had worked Blackmire since 1942. Ezekiel was a hard man, weathered by decades of wilderness living and not given to flights of fancy. When he spoke, you listened, because he never wasted words on nonsense. I found him sitting on the porch of the main ranger station one evening in the fall of 1973, staring out at the tree line with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was fear. Pure, undisguised fear. I asked him what was wrong, and for a long moment he did not answer. Then he turned to me with eyes that seemed decades older than they had that morning, and spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "There is a place in the deep woods," he said. "A place that should not exist. I found it once, back in '57. Got lost during a storm and wandered for 3 days before I stumbled out of the trees and saw it. A town. Houses and streets and a church with a white steeple. People walking around like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it was not normal, Cornelius. Nothing about it was normal. The people moved wrong. They smiled wrong. And when they looked at me, I could see something behind their eyes. Something that was not human. I ran until my legs gave out, and when I finally found my way back to the station, I swore I would never speak of it again. But lately I have been having dreams. Dreams about that town. Dreams about the things that live there. And I think they know that I know. I think they are coming for me." I tried to get more details from Ezekiel, but he refused to say another word. He just sat there on that porch, staring at the darkening forest, until the sun went down and the shadows swallowed everything. The next morning, Ezekiel Thorne was gone. His cabin was empty. His belongings were untouched. His truck was still parked in the same spot it had been for years, but Ezekiel himself had vanished without a trace. We searched for him for 2 weeks, combing every inch of the forest within a 20-mile radius. We found nothing. No body, no tracks, no sign that he had ever left his cabin at all. The official report listed him as a probable victim of animal attack, his remains scattered by scavengers. But I knew better. I knew that whatever he had seen in that hidden town had finally come to collect him. I should have left it alone. I should have accepted the official explanation and moved on with my life. But I could not stop thinking about what Ezekiel had said. A town in the middle of the wilderness, populated by things that wore human faces. It was impossible. It was insane. And yet, I could not shake the feeling that every word of it was true. So I started digging. I went through the station archives, looking for any mention of unusual structures or settlements in the deep forest. I talked to the old-timers, the hunters and trappers who had been working these woods for generations. I collected stories and rumors and half-remembered legends, piecing them together like fragments of a shattered mirror. What I found was a pattern that stretched back over a century. The first recorded mention of the town came from a surveying expedition in 1879. A team of cartographers had been mapping the interior of what would later become Blackmire National Forest when 3 of their members disappeared during a routine reconnaissance. The survivors reported that the missing men had wandered off to investigate what they described as lights in the distance, flickering through the trees like lanterns. They were never seen again. The expedition leader, a man named Josiah Whitcomb, wrote in his journal that he had glimpsed something through the fog on the morning after the disappearances. He described it as a collection of structures, houses, and buildings arranged along what appeared to be a main street, all of it shrouded in a mist so thick it seemed almost solid. He wanted to investigate, but the remaining members of his team refused to go any further. They abandoned the survey and fled the forest, and the area was marked on their preliminary maps as uncharted territory. Dangerous, do not enter. That map was never published. The survey company went bankrupt the following year, and its records were scattered to the winds. But a copy of Josiah Whitcomb's journal survived, tucked away in the basement of a historical society in Portland. I found it during my research, and what I read there chilled me to the bone. Whitcomb had continued to write about his experience in the forest for years after the expedition. He was haunted by what he had seen and by what he had not seen. He wrote about dreams of walking through empty streets while something watched him from behind curtained windows. He wrote about hearing voices calling his name from the darkness outside his bedroom window. He wrote about seeing faces in crowds that he recognized from the forest, the faces of the men who had disappeared, smiling at him with expressions that did not quite fit their features. Josiah Whitcomb spent the last decade of his life in an asylum. His final journal entry, dated 1891, consisted of a single sentence repeated over and over again until it filled the entire page. They are coming. They are coming. They are coming. I found similar accounts scattered throughout the historical record. Hunters who reported seeing buildings where no buildings should exist. Loggers who told stories of encountering strangers on remote trails. Strangers who moved with an unsettling fluidity and spoke in voices that seemed to echo from somewhere far away. Missing persons cases that were never solved. People who had ventured into the deep forest and never returned. And always, always, the dreams. The people who had glimpsed the town, even from a distance, all reported the same phenomenon. Vivid, recurring dreams of walking through streets they had never seen, of being watched by eyes that glowed in the darkness, of hearing whispers that promised them things they did not want. Some of these people recovered and went on to live normal lives. Others, like Josiah Whitcomb, were not so fortunate. By the winter of 1973, I had compiled a substantial dossier on the hidden town. I had maps showing the approximate locations of sightings. I had testimonies from witnesses spanning nearly 100 years. I had a theory, incomplete and terrifying, about what the town might actually be. But I did not have proof. I did not have first-hand experience, and I knew that until I saw the town with my own eyes, I would never truly understand what had happened to Ezekiel Thorne or any of the others who had vanished over the years. So I decided to find it. I set out on the morning of December 3rd, 1973. The weather was cold but clear, perfect conditions for a long hike into the backcountry. I told my colleagues at the station that I was going to check on some remote trail markers and would be back in 3 days. I packed enough supplies for a week, just in case, and I brought my service revolver, more for comfort than any expectation of actually needing it. I also brought a compass, a detailed topographical map of the forest, and a notebook in which I planned to document everything I encountered. The first 2 days of my journey were uneventful. I followed a route that took me through some of the most remote sections of Blackmire, areas that even experienced rangers rarely visited. The forest here was older and darker than anywhere else in the park, the trees so massive that walking among them felt like moving through a cathedral built by giants. The silence was absolute, broken only by the crunch of my boots on the frozen ground and the occasional distant call of a raven. I saw no signs of human presence, no trails or clearings or evidence that anyone had passed this way in years. It was easy to believe that I was the first person to ever set foot in this part of the forest. It was also easy to believe that I was being watched. On the evening of the second day, I made camp in a small hollow sheltered by a ring of massive cedars. The temperature had dropped significantly since morning, and I could see my breath misting in the air as I set up my tent and started a small fire. I ate a cold dinner of dried meat and hardtack, not wanting to spend the energy cooking, and then I sat by the fire and reviewed my notes. According to my calculations, I was now within the general area where most of the sightings had occurred. If the town existed, if it was real and not just a collection of hallucinations and hoaxes, then it should be somewhere within a few miles of my current position. I do not know what time it was when I first heard the bells. I had fallen asleep by the fire, my notebook still open in my lap, and the sound woke me with a start. It was faint, barely audible over the crackling of the embers, but it was unmistakable. Church bells. Ringing somewhere in the distance, their tones carrying through the frozen air with a clarity that seemed impossible given how far from civilization I was. I sat up and listened, my heart pounding in my chest. The bells rang 3 times, then stopped. The silence that followed was so profound that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I did not sleep again that night. I sat by the dying fire with my revolver in my hand, watching the darkness beyond the ring of cedars and waiting for something to emerge. Nothing did, but I could feel it out there, a presence lurking just beyond the edge of my perception, observing me with patient, inhuman interest. When dawn finally came, gray and cold and unwelcoming, I packed up my camp and continued my journey with a sense of dread that I could not shake. I found the town that afternoon. I was following a dry stream bed that wound through a narrow valley between 2 ridges. The fog had rolled in sometime around midday, reducing visibility to perhaps 50 feet in any direction. I was navigating by compass, keeping a careful eye on my heading, when I noticed that something was wrong. The trees around me were different. They were still Douglas firs and cedars, still ancient and massive, but they were arranged in a pattern that was too regular to be natural. They stood in neat rows, as if they had been planted by human hands, and the spaces between them were clear of undergrowth, almost like pathways. I stopped and looked around, my breath catching in my throat. Through the fog, I could see shapes, buildings, houses with dark windows and peaked roofs. A water tower rising above the tree line, its silhouette ghostly and indistinct. A church steeple, white against the gray sky, with a bell visible in the belfry. I had found it. The town that should not exist. The town that appeared on no map and existed in no record. The town where things that were not human wore human faces and smiled with too many teeth. For a long moment, I stood there at the edge of the forest, unable to move. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to turn around and run, to flee back to civilization and pretend I had never seen this place. But I had come too far. I had sacrificed too much. I needed to know the truth, no matter how terrible it might be. So I took a deep breath, gripped my revolver tightly, and stepped out of the trees and into the town. The main street was paved with cobblestones, worn smooth by what appeared to be centuries of use. The buildings that lined it were old, built in a style that seemed to date from the late 1800s, but they were in perfect condition. No peeling paint, no broken windows, no signs of decay or neglect. It was as if the entire town had been frozen in time, preserved in some impossible bubble that kept it isolated from the outside world. The fog hung low over everything, muffling sound and blurring the edges of my vision. I could not see more than a block in any direction, and the silence was so complete that I could hear my own footsteps echoing off the buildings like gunshots. I walked slowly down the center of the street, my head swiveling from side to side as I tried to take in every detail. The houses were all similar in design. 2-story structures with front porches and shuttered windows. Most of them had lights burning in the windows, warm and inviting, as if families were gathered inside enjoying a quiet evening at home. But I could not see anyone through the glass. The windows were too dark, the interiors too shadowed, despite the light that seemed to emanate from within. I passed a general store with goods displayed in the window. Canned foods and bolts of fabric and tools that looked like they had been manufactured 100 years ago. I passed a barber shop with a spinning pole that turned slowly despite the absence of any visible mechanism. I passed a schoolhouse with a bell mounted above the door, the same bell that I had heard ringing in the night. And then I saw them, the people. They emerged from the fog like ghosts, appearing from doorways and side streets and alleys between buildings. Men and women and children, all of them dressed in clothing that seemed to be from another era, long skirts and suspenders and bonnets and bowler hats. They moved with a strange, fluid grace, their feet barely seeming to touch the ground as they walked, and they were all smiling. Every single one of them was smiling, their lips stretched wide across their faces, their teeth gleaming white in the gray light of the fog. I stopped in the middle of the street, my revolver raised, my finger on the trigger. The people stopped too, forming a loose circle around me, their smiles never wavering. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the pounding of my heart. Then one of them stepped forward. A man, or something that looked like a man, dressed in a dark suit with a high collar and a pocket watch chain dangling from his vest. His face was pleasant enough, handsome even, with strong features and kind eyes. But there was something wrong with the way he moved, something wrong with the way his limbs bent and flexed. It was like watching a puppet controlled by an inexperienced puppeteer. The motions just slightly off, just slightly too smooth, just slightly inhuman. "Welcome, traveler," he said. His voice was warm and welcoming, but it seemed to come from somewhere far away, as if it were echoing through a long tunnel. "We have been expecting you." I did not lower my weapon. "Who are you?" I demanded. "What is this place?" The man's smile widened, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp, just a little too numerous. "This is Hollow Pines," he said. "Our home. And soon, it will be your home too." I do not know what happened next. One moment I was standing in the street surrounded by those smiling faces, and the next moment I was running blindly through the fog, crashing through alleys and over fences, my lungs burning and my legs screaming. I heard them behind me, not chasing but following, their footsteps perfectly synchronized, their voices calling out in unison. "Stay with us. Stay with us. You belong here now. You are one of us." I ran until I could not run anymore. I ran until I burst out of the trees and found myself on a trail that I recognized, a trail that led back to the ranger station. I did not stop to rest. I did not stop to catch my breath. I just kept moving, putting as much distance as possible between myself and that impossible town. I made it back to the station 2 days later, exhausted and half mad with fear. My colleagues asked me what had happened, where I had been, why I looked like I had seen a ghost. I told them nothing. I could not tell them. Who would have believed me? A hidden town in the middle of the forest, populated by things that were not human. It sounded like the ravings of a lunatic. So I kept my silence. I filed my reports. I went back to my duties, and I tried, desperately, to forget what I had seen. But the town did not forget me. The dream started that very night. I was walking through the streets of Hollow Pines, the fog swirling around me, the buildings looming on either side. The people were there, watching me from windows and doorways, their smiles gleaming in the darkness. And at the end of the street, standing in front of the church with the white steeple, was the man in the dark suit. He was waiting for me. He was always waiting for me. "You cannot escape," he said. "You have seen us now. You have breathed our air. You have walked our streets. A part of you will always be here, Cornelius. A part of you already belongs to us." I woke up screaming. I woke up every night screaming, drenched in sweat, my heart racing, my mind filled with images that I could not shake. The dreams came without fail, every single night, and each time they were a little more vivid, a little more detailed, a little more real. I started seeing things during the day too, glimpses of figures moving at the edge of my vision, shapes that disappeared when I turned to look at them directly. I heard whispers on the wind, voices calling my name from the depths of the forest. I felt eyes on me constantly, watching, waiting, patient. I tried to tell myself it was just stress, just trauma, just my mind processing the horror of what I had experienced. But deep down, I knew the truth. The town had marked me. It had claimed me as one of its own. And sooner or later, it would come to collect what belonged to it. Months passed. The dreams continued, but I learned to live with them. I developed coping mechanisms, ways to push the visions and whispers to the back of my mind so that I could function during the day. I threw myself into my work, taking on extra shifts and volunteering for the most remote and dangerous assignments. I thought that if I could just stay busy enough, if I could just exhaust myself enough, I might be able to outrun the thing that was chasing me. I was wrong. In the spring of 1974, a group of hikers went missing in the eastern sector of Blackmire. They were experienced outdoorsmen, a party of 4 who had been exploring the backcountry for years. They had filed a detailed itinerary with the station and had checked in via radio every evening as planned. And then, on the 5th day of their trip, the check-ins stopped. We organized a search immediately, sending teams into the area where they had last reported. We found their camp on the 2nd day, tents still standing, supplies still intact, fire pits still warm with the embers of a recent fire, but the hikers themselves were gone, vanished, without a trace. I was part of the team that found a 5th set of tracks leading away from the camp. They were fresh, pressed into the soft earth just hours before we arrived, and they led deeper into the forest, toward the area where I had found Hollow Pines. I followed those tracks alone, telling my colleagues that I would scout ahead and radio if I found anything. I did not want them to see what I suspected was waiting at the end of that trail. The tracks led me through increasingly dense forest, through valleys and over ridges, through places where the trees grew so close together that I had to turn sideways to squeeze between them. And then, without warning, the forest opened up, and I was standing at the edge of hollow pines once again. The fog was thicker this time, so thick that I could barely see my hand in front of my face. But I could hear them, the people, moving through the mist, their footsteps soft and synchronized, their whispers blending into a constant, susurrant hum. I stood at the tree line, my revolver drawn, and I called out into the fog. "I know you have them, the hikers. Give them back." For a long moment, there was no response. Then the fog parted, and the man in the dark suit emerged. He was smiling, as always, his teeth gleaming, his eyes bright with an intelligence that was not quite human. "They came to us willingly," he said. "They heard our call and followed it, just as you did. They are part of Hollow Pines now. They are home." "That is not possible," I said. "They did not even know this place existed." The man's smile widened. "Everyone knows this place exists, Cornelius. Deep down, in the parts of themselves they try to ignore. Hollow Pines has always been here, waiting, and it will be here long after your world has crumbled to dust. We are patient, we are eternal, and we are always hungry." He took a step toward me, and I raised my revolver, aiming at the center of his chest. "You cannot hurt us," he said. "Weapons of your world have no power here, but I admire your spirit. That is why we have been watching you so closely. That is why we have been waiting for you to return." "I will never join you," I said. "I will never become one of you." The man laughed, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You already are one of us, Cornelius. You have been one of us since the moment you first set foot in Hollow Pines. The only question is how long it will take you to accept it." He gestured behind him, and figures emerged from the fog. The hikers, all four of them, still wearing the same clothes they had been wearing when they disappeared. But their faces were different. Their smiles were too wide. Their eyes were too bright. They had been changed, transformed, remade in the image of Hollow Pines. "Say hello to your new neighbors," the man in the dark suit said. "They are eager to make your acquaintance." I did not stay to listen. I turned and ran, crashing through the forest, branches tearing at my clothes and face. Behind me, I could hear the man's voice, calm and patient, echoing through the trees. "We will be waiting, Cornelius. We will always be waiting. And one day, you will come home." I made it back to the station, and I told my colleagues what I had found. I told them about the town, about the people, about the hikers who had been transformed into something inhuman. They did not believe me. Of course they did not believe me. They thought I had gone mad, that the stress of the job had finally broken something inside me. They put me on administrative leave and recommended that I seek psychological help. I agreed, because what else could I do? I knew the truth, but the truth was too terrible to be accepted. I spent 6 months in a facility in Portland, talking to doctors and taking medication and trying to convince myself that what I had seen was just a hallucination, a product of an overworked mind and too many years spent in isolation. By the end of my treatment, I had almost succeeded. I had almost convinced myself that Hollow Pines was not real, that it was just a story I had constructed to explain the unexplainable. I went back to work at Blackmire, and I resumed my duties, and I tried to put the whole nightmare behind me. But the dreams never stopped. And the disappearances never stopped. Over the next 4 decades, I documented every missing persons case in Blackmire National Forest, every hiker who vanished without a trace, every camper who walked into the woods and never came back, every child who wandered off from a family picnic and was never seen again. I tracked the patterns, I mapped the locations, I interviewed the survivors, the witnesses, the family members left behind, and I discovered something that confirmed my worst fears. They were all connected to Hollow Pines, every single one of them. The disappearances clustered around a specific area of the forest, the same area where I had found the town. They happened most frequently in the fall and spring, during times of fog and low visibility, and the people who vanished were always the same type: outsiders, travelers, people who did not belong to the forest and did not understand its rules. Hollow Pines was hunting them. Hollow Pines was feeding on them, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried to warn people. I put up signs on the trails, cautioning hikers to stay out of certain areas. I lobbied the Park Service to close sections of the forest that I knew were dangerous. I even tried to burn the town down once, hiking in with containers of gasoline and a box of matches, determined to destroy the source of the evil once and for all. But I could not find it. No matter how carefully I followed my maps, no matter how precisely I traced my route, I could not find Hollow Pines. It was as if the town had hidden itself from me, as if it knew what I was planning and had decided to deny me the opportunity. Or maybe it was just waiting for me to come to it willingly, as it had always known I would. I am an old man now, 87 years old, retired from the Ranger Service, living in a small cabin on the edge of Blackmore. I do not have much time left. The doctors say my heart is giving out, that I have months at best, maybe weeks. I have made my peace with that. I have lived a long life, longer than I ever expected given what I know and what I have seen. But before I go, I need to tell this story. I need to warn the people who come after me about the danger that lurks in the depths of this forest. Hollow Pines is real. It has always been real. It is not a town in any conventional sense, but rather a kind of trap. A lure designed to attract the unwary and the curious. The people who live there, if you can call them people, are not human. They are something older and darker, something that has existed in these woods since before recorded history. They wear human faces because it makes them more effective predators. They smile because that is how they identify their prey. I do not know what happens to the people who are taken by Hollow Pines. I do not know if they are killed or transformed or something worse. All I know is that they never come back, at least not as they were. Some of them become residents of the town, smiling and waiting for the next visitor. Others simply disappear, absorbed into the fog and the shadows and the endless, patient hunger of the forest. And the town is growing. In the decades since I first found it, the number of disappearances has increased steadily. There are more sightings now, more reports of strange lights in the forest and voices calling from the trees. The boundary of the town is expanding, reaching out into areas that were once safe, claiming new territory for itself. I believe that one day, perhaps not in my lifetime but soon, Hollow Pines will grow large enough to swallow the entire forest. And then it will reach beyond the forest, into the towns and cities that surround it, hungry for more souls to consume. I have one final piece of advice for anyone reading this account. Do not go looking for Hollow Pines. Do not try to find it. Do not try to map it. Do not try to understand it. If you hear bells ringing in the forest at night, plug your ears and run. If you see lights flickering through the trees, turn around and do not look back. If you hear voices calling your name, do not answer. Do not acknowledge them. Do not give them permission to enter your life. And if you ever find yourself walking down a cobblestone street surrounded by buildings that should not exist and people who smile too widely, do whatever it takes to escape. Run. Fight. Scream. Do anything except accept the hospitality of Hollow Pines. Because once you accept, once you belong, you will never leave. You will become part of the town, part of the trap, another smiling face waiting for the next victim to stumble out of the trees. My name is Cornelius Ashworth. I was a ranger in Blackmore National Forest for 41 years, and these are the last words I will ever write. The dreams are getting stronger now. I can hear the bells ringing, even though I am miles from the forest. I can see the fog creeping under my door, thick and cold and patient. I can hear voices outside my window calling my name, welcoming me home. I think it is time for me to go. I think Hollow Pines has finally come to collect what belongs to it. I am not afraid. After all these years, I am almost relieved. The waiting is over. The running is done. I am going home. I only hope that someone reads this account and takes my warning seriously. I hope that my death, my disappearance, my absorption into that terrible town will not be meaningless. Stay out of the forest. Stay away from Hollow Pines. And whatever you do, do not answer when they call your name. Recording ends. The following addendum was discovered among Cornelius Ashworth's personal effects after his disappearance in the spring of 2014. His cabin was found empty, the door standing open, and a thin layer of fog covering the floor despite the clear weather outside. His body was never recovered. Additional accounts from the Blackmore archives. In compiling this record, I have included several additional testimonies that corroborate my own experiences and shed further light on the nature of Hollow Pines. These accounts span nearly a century and come from a variety of sources, including fellow rangers, local residents, and researchers who made the mistake of investigating too deeply into the mysteries of the forest. Account 1. The Testimony of Elihu Carstairs, 1932. Elihu Carstairs was a trapper who worked the streams and valleys of Blackmore in the early 20th century. He was known among the local population as a reliable man, not given to exaggeration or tall tales. In the winter of 1932, he stumbled into a logging camp on the outskirts of the forest, half frozen and raving about what he had seen in the deep woods. The foreman of the camp, a man named Jedediah Morton, recorded Carstairs' testimony before the trapper died of exposure 3 days later. "I was following a marten through the old growth," Carstairs reportedly said. "Good pelt, worth good money. Tracked it for miles, deeper into the forest than I had ever gone. Lost my bearings sometime around noon, could not find the sun through the canopy. Kept walking, figuring I would hit a stream or a ridge eventually, something to orient myself. Instead, I found the town. It came out of nowhere, like it had been waiting for me. One moment I was pushing through underbrush and the next I was standing on a street, an actual street, paved with stones, buildings on either side. Looked like something out of my grandfather's time, old-fashioned, well-maintained. Lights in the windows, smoke coming from chimneys. Seemed like a normal place, except for where it was. I called out, asked if anyone could help me find my way. No one answered at first. Then I heard the doors opening, all of them, all at once like they had been waiting for a signal, and people started coming out. They looked normal enough, men, women, children, dressed old-fashioned like the buildings, but the way they moved was wrong, too smooth, like they were gliding instead of walking, and their faces, God help me, their faces, they were smiling, all of them, the same smile, too wide, too many teeth, and their eyes were not right, they were empty, like looking into a well that goes down forever. I ran. I do not remember much after that. Just running, falling, getting up, running again. Do not know how I made it out. Do not know why they let me go. Maybe they wanted me to spread the word. Maybe they wanted others to come looking. Do not go looking. Whatever you do not go looking for that place. It is not a town. It is a trap. And the things that live there are not people. They are something else. Something that has been waiting in the forest for a very long time. Something hungry. Elihu Carstairs died on the morning of January 17, 1932. His body was buried in the cemetery of the nearby town of Millbrook, but according to local records, his grave was found empty 3 weeks later. The coffin had been opened from the inside, and a trail of footprints led from the cemetery into the forest. The footprints were never followed. Account 2. The Diary of Phoebe Whitmore, 1951. Phoebe Whitmore was the daughter of a forest ranger stationed at Blackmire in the early 1950s. She was 12 years old when her family moved to the ranger station, and she kept a detailed diary of her experiences in the forest. Most of her entries are typical of a child her age, descriptions of school, friends, games, and dreams. But in the fall of 1951, the tone of her diary changed dramatically. October 3rd, 1951. Something is wrong with the forest. Father came home late today, looking scared. He would not tell Mother what happened, but I heard them talking after I was supposed to be asleep. He said he found something in the woods, something that should not be there. Mother told him he was imagining things, but I could tell she did not believe it either. I am going to ask Father about it tomorrow. October 5th. Father will not talk about what he saw. He just gets quiet and stares out the window at the trees. Mother is worried. She wants to move back to Portland, but Father says he cannot leave. He says he has to understand what is happening here. I do not like the way he looks anymore. His eyes are different, like he is seeing something that the rest of us cannot see. October 10th. I saw them today, the people from the town. I was walking home from school when I heard someone calling my name. It came from the forest, from deep in the trees where the shadows are darkest. I looked, even though I knew I should not, and I saw them, a man and a woman, standing just at the edge of the tree line. They were smiling at me, waving. Their mouths were moving, but I could not hear what they were saying. I ran home and locked myself in my room. I am afraid to tell Father. I am afraid of what he might do. October 15th. The dreams have started. Every night I dream of walking through a town made of fog and shadows. The people are there, waiting for me, welcoming me. They say I belong with them. They say I have always belonged with them. When I wake up, I can still hear their voices, whispering at the edge of my hearing. I think they want me to come to them. I think they have always wanted me. October 22nd. Father is gone. He left in the middle of the night without saying goodbye. Mother found his boots by the door and his rifle still hanging on the wall. The forest took him. I know it did. The people from the town came for him, and he went with them willingly. I can feel them watching me now. I can feel them waiting. October 31st. This is my last entry. The voices are too loud now. I cannot ignore them anymore. They are calling my name, promising me things I do not understand. I am going to the forest tonight. I am going to find the town and see what is there. Maybe I will find Father. Maybe I will find out what has been happening to us. Mother, if you read this, I am sorry. I love you, but I have to know. Phoebe Whitmore disappeared on the night of October 31st, 1951. Her body was never found. Her mother, Abigail Whitmore, reportedly spent years searching for her daughter before dying of a heart attack in 1963. According to witnesses at her funeral, Abigail's last words were, "I can hear her calling me." Account 3. The Field Notes of Professor Archibald Crane, 1967. Professor Archibald Crane was a folklore researcher from the University of Oregon who spent several years studying the legends and myths associated with Blackmore National Forest. In the summer of 1967, he organized an expedition to investigate reports of a hidden settlement in the forest's interior. His team consisted of 3 graduate students, a photographer, and a local guide. Only the guide returned. The following excerpts are taken from Professor Crane's field notes, which were found in the guide's possession when he emerged from the forest 3 weeks after the expedition began. Day 7. We have moved deeper into the forest than any previous expedition. The terrain is challenging, heavily forested, and virtually impassable in places. My guide, a man named Absalom Finch, seems increasingly reluctant to continue. He claims that we are approaching territory that the locals consider forbidden, a place where the old stories say the lost ones dwell. I have pressed him for details, but he refuses to elaborate. Superstition, I suspect, but I find his nervousness unsettling. Day 12. Strange occurrences last night. Several members of the team reported hearing voices in the darkness calling their names. I dismissed it as wind through the trees, but this morning I found footprints around our campsite. They were human in shape, but oddly proportioned. The feet too long, the toes too splayed. Absalom wants to turn back. I have convinced him to continue for 2 more days. Day 14. We found it. The town. It emerged from the fog like a mirage. Buildings and streets and a church with a white steeple. The architecture appears to date from the mid-19th century, well preserved despite its apparent age and isolation. The team is excited. This is a significant discovery, proof that settlement in the region began earlier than previously thought. We plan to enter the town tomorrow morning and begin our survey. Day 15. This will be my final entry. We entered the town at dawn and were greeted by the residents. They seemed friendly enough at first, welcoming us, offering us food and shelter. But as the day progressed, I began to notice things. The way they moved, too smooth, too synchronized. The way they smiled, too wide, too fixed. The way they looked at us like they were sizing us up, measuring us for something. In the evening, I tried to leave. I told my host, a man who called himself Mr. Thaddeus, that we needed to return to our camp. He smiled that too wide smile and shook his head. "You are home now," he said. "You belong to Hollow Pines. You have always belonged to Hollow Pines. My team is gone." I watched them walk into the fog, one by one, their faces blank, their steps perfectly synchronized with the residents. I am the only one left. I am writing this note and giving it to Absalom, who I pray will make it out. If you are reading this, do not come looking for us. Do not try to find Hollow Pines. It is not a place. It is a trap, and we are the bait. Professor Crane's note ends here. Absalom Finch was found wandering on a forest road 3 weeks later, dehydrated and incoherent. He refused to speak about what he had seen, and he died by his own hand 6 months later. His suicide note consisted of a single sentence. "They are still calling me." Account 4. The radio transmission of Ranger Obadiah Marsh, 1989. Obadiah Marsh was a senior ranger at Blackmore who disappeared during a routine patrol in the fall of 1989. The following is a transcript of his final radio transmission received at the main station on the evening of October 15th. "Station, this is Marsh. Do you copy? Over." "We copy, Marsh. What is your status? Over." "I am at grid reference Charlie 79er. Something is wrong here. The trees are different. They are arranged in rows like they were planted, and there is fog everywhere. I can barely see 10 feet in front of me. Over." "Copy that, Marsh. Do you need assistance?" "Over." "Negative. I am going to investigate. There is something ahead. It looks like buildings." "Repeat. I can see buildings through the fog." "Over." "Marsh, Be advised, there are no structures at that location. Recommend you return to base. Over. Station. I can see them clearly now. It is a town, an actual town, right here in the middle of the forest. I am going to approach and investigate. Over. Marsh, we strongly recommend you abort and return to base. Do you copy? Over. Station, the people are coming out. They are coming out of the houses. There are dozens of them. They are smiling. They are all smiling. Over. Marsh, return to base immediately. Do you copy? Over. Station, they are calling my name. How do they know my name? They are calling me. They are welcoming me home, I think. I think I have been here before. I think I have always been here. Over. Marsh, respond. Over. I can see my wife. I can see my daughter. They are waiting for me. They have been waiting for me for so long. I am going to them now. I am going home. Marsh, respond. Over. Goodbye, station. Tell them not to look for me. Tell them I found what I was looking for. End of transmission. Ranger Obadiah. Marsh's wife had died in 1978. His daughter had disappeared in the forest in 1982. Neither body was ever recovered. Account 5. The Confession of Constance Devereaux, 2003. Constance Devereaux was a local woman who claimed to have escaped from Hollow Pines after being held there for several years. Her account was recorded by a social worker at a crisis center in Portland, where Devereaux appeared in the winter of 2003. She was suffering from severe malnutrition and exposure, and she died 2 weeks after giving her testimony. I do not know how long I was there. Time does not work the same way in Hollow Pines. It could have been years. It could have been centuries. All I know is that I went into the forest one day, and I did not come out until now. They found me on a trail near the eastern ridge. I was hiking alone, which I know was stupid, but I had done it dozens of times before without any problems. This time was different. The fog came out of nowhere, thick and cold, and suddenly I was lost. I could not find the trail. I could not find the sun. I just kept walking, hoping I would eventually stumble onto something familiar. Instead, I stumbled onto the town. It was beautiful at first, like stepping into a painting from another era. The buildings were pristine, the streets were clean, and the people were friendly. Too friendly. They welcomed me like I was a long-lost relative, offered me food and shelter, told me I could stay as long as I wanted. I was tired and scared, so I accepted. That was my mistake. I started to notice things after the first few days. The way the townspeople never seemed to sleep. The way they all smiled the same smile, said the same things, moved in the same strange, fluid way. The way the fog never lifted, keeping the town isolated from the rest of the world. I tried to leave, but every road led back to the center of town. I tried to find the forest, but the trees seemed to move when I was not looking, rearranging themselves to block my path. And then I started to change. It was gradual at first. I would catch myself smiling for no reason, the same wide smile that the townspeople wore. I would find myself moving differently, more smoothly, more fluidly. I would hear voices in my head, whispering to me, telling me to let go, telling me to accept, telling me that I was home now and there was no point in fighting. I do not know how I escaped. I remember running. I remember the fog parting for just a moment, revealing a gap in the trees. I remember throwing myself through that gap and tumbling down a hillside, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. And then I was out. I was back in the real world, lying on a dirt road with the sun shining down on me for the first time in what felt like forever. But I'm not really out. I know that now. They are still in my head. The voices, the whispers. They are calling me back, telling me that I belong to them, that I will always belong to them. I can feel myself changing, becoming more like them every day. Soon I will not be able to resist anymore. Soon I will go back. I am telling you this because people need to know. Hollow Pines is real. It is out there, waiting, hungry, and once it gets its hooks into you, it never lets go. Constance Devereaux died on February 3, 2003. The cause of death was listed as heart failure, but witnesses at the hospital reported that in her final moments, she was smiling, a wide smile, too many teeth. Her body disappeared from the morgue 3 days later. Final account. The Last Testament of Cornelius Ashworth, 2014. This is it. The end. I can feel them coming for me now, closer with every passing moment. The fog is seeping under the door. The voices are louder than ever. They are calling my name, welcoming me home, promising me that the waiting is finally over. I have spent 41 years trying to understand Hollow Pines. 41 years trying to fight it, to warn others, to somehow stop the endless cycle of disappearances and deaths. I have failed. The town is stronger now than it has ever been. The disappearances are more frequent. The boundary is expanding, and soon, very soon, there will be nowhere left to run. I do not know what Hollow Pines really is. I do not know if it is a place or an entity or something in between. I do not know where the people came from, the smiling people with the empty eyes and the two sharp teeth. I do not know what happens to the victims after they are taken, whether they are killed or transformed or absorbed into something greater than themselves. All I know is that it is hungry. It has always been hungry, and it will never stop feeding. If you are reading this, please heed my warnings. Stay away from Blackmire National Forest. Stay away from the fog and the darkness and the voices that call from the trees. Stay away from the roads that lead nowhere and the trails that shift when you are not looking. Stay away from Hollow Pines. And if you hear someone calling your name from the forest, someone you love, someone you have lost, do not answer, do not follow, do not believe. It is not them. It has never been them. It is just the town, the trap, the hunger that never ends. Goodbye. This concludes the written record left by Cornelius Ashworth. His cabin was found empty on the morning of April 7th, 2014. A thin layer of fog covered the floor despite the clear weather outside. The door was standing open, and footprints led from the threshold into the forest. The footprints stopped approximately 100 yards into the tree line. Beyond that point, there was only undisturbed forest floor, as if whoever had made the prints had simply ceased to exist. A search was organized, but no trace of Cornelius Ashworth was ever found. 3 months later, a hiker reported seeing an old man standing at the edge of a clearing deep in the forest. The man was smiling, the hiker said. A wide smile. Too many teeth. Postscript regarding the ongoing investigation. In the years since Cornelius Ashworth's disappearance, the Blackmire National Forest has seen a significant increase in missing persons cases. The pattern of disappearances matches exactly what Ashworth described in his notes, clustering around a specific area of the forest, occurring most frequently during times of fog and low visibility, targeting individuals who have ventured off the marked trails. Several attempts have been made to locate the settlement that Ashworth referred to as Hollow Pines. All have failed. Aerial surveys reveal nothing unusual in the suspected area. Ground expeditions consistently become disoriented and find themselves back at their starting points. Electronic equipment malfunctions within a certain radius, rendering GPS navigation unreliable. The official position of the National Park Service is that no such settlement exists and that the disappearances are the result of natural hazards combined with human error. This position has been maintained despite mounting evidence to the contrary. Unofficially, certain members of the ranger staff have begun compiling their own records of unusual phenomena. Reports of strange lights in the forest after dark, sounds that cannot be attributed to any known animal, figures glimpsed at the edge of the tree line, watching, waiting, smiling. A decision has been made to close certain sections of Blackmire to public access, ostensibly for environmental protection purposes. The true reason is known only to a handful of senior officials. The fog is spreading, the voices are getting louder, and deep in the heart of the forest, in a place that appears on no map and exists in no record, a town waits. Hollow Pines is patient, Hollow Pines is eternal, and Hollow Pines is always hungry. This document is classified. Distribution is restricted to authorized personnel only. Any attempt to share this information with the public will be met with severe consequences. We cannot stop what is happening. We can only try to contain it, and pray that containment is enough. End of record. Supplemental materials. Collected warnings and guidelines. The following guidelines have been developed based on the patterns observed in disappearance cases and the testimonies of those who have allegedly encountered Hollow Pines. They are presented here for reference purposes only and should not be considered official policy. 1. Do not venture off marked trails in the interior sections of Blackmire National Forest. The danger increases exponentially as one moves deeper into the forest. 2. If fog develops unexpectedly during your hike, return to the nearest marked trail immediately. Do not attempt to navigate by compass or GPS, as these devices have proven unreliable in affected areas. 3. If you hear voices calling your name from the forest, do not respond. Do not investigate. Return to your vehicle or the nearest ranger station as quickly as possible. 4. If you see lights in the forest at night, do not approach them. These lights have been associated with multiple disappearances and should be treated as extremely dangerous. 5. If you encounter a structure that does not appear on your map, do not enter it. Do not investigate. Leave the area immediately. 6. If you find yourself in a place where the trees appear to be arranged in rows, you have entered dangerous territory. Turn around and retrace your steps. Do not proceed further under any circumstances. 7. If you encounter other people in remote areas of the forest, observe them carefully before approaching. Pay attention to the way they move, the way they speak, the way they smile. If anything seems wrong, trust your instincts and leave. 8. If you begin experiencing recurring dreams about a town in the forest, seek professional help immediately. Early intervention may prevent further psychological deterioration. 9. If you believe you have visited Hollow Pines and escaped, report to the nearest ranger station immediately. Your testimony may help us understand this phenomenon and potentially save lives. 10. Above all, remember that the forest is not always what it seems. Respect its power, respect its mystery, and never, ever assume that you understand what you are dealing with. These guidelines are not a guarantee of safety. Nothing can guarantee safety in Blackmire National Forest, but following them may increase your chances of survival. Stay vigilant. Stay alert, stay alive, and whatever you do, do not answer when they call. End of document. Appendix. Excerpts from recent incident reports. The following excerpts have been compiled from incident reports filed by Blackmire Rangers over the past 5 years. Names and identifying details have been redacted to protect the privacy of those involved. Incident Report 772. Date: June 15, 2019. Reporting ranger arrived at campsite following failure of occupants to check out on scheduled date. Campsite was found intact, with all belongings in place. No signs of struggle or animal activity. 2 adults and 1 child were listed as occupants, none of whom were present. Upon investigation, ranger discovered footprints leading away from campsite toward the northwest. Footprints terminated approximately 200 yards into the forest with no indication of where occupants may have gone. Ranger reported hearing what sounded like a child laughing from somewhere deeper in the forest. Laughter continued for approximately 2 minutes before stopping abruptly. Search teams were dispatched but found no trace of missing persons. Case remains open. Incident Report 819. Date: October 3, 2020. Ranger on routine patrol reported encountering an unknown individual on the Blackwood Trail. Individual was described as male, approximately 50 years of age, wearing clothing that appeared to date from the early 20th century. Individual did not respond to verbal communication, but smiled continuously throughout the encounter. Ranger noted that the smile appeared too wide, stretching beyond the normal limits of the human face. When Ranger attempted to approach, individual turned and walked into the forest, disappearing from view despite Ranger's attempts to follow. Ranger reported feeling watched for the remainder of his patrol. No additional contact with unknown individual. Incident logged. No further action required. Incident Report 846. Date: December 19, 2020. Emergency call received from hiker, reporting that their companion had walked into the forest and failed to return. Caller was highly distressed and reported hearing voices calling their companion's name. Rescue team dispatched. Upon arrival, caller was found alone at the trailhead. Caller claimed to have seen their companion walking toward a group of people standing at the edge of the tree line. Caller described the people as smiling and waving. When asked to identify the location of these individuals, caller pointed to an area that, upon investigation, showed no signs of human presence. Caller's companion was never found. Caller was treated for shock and released. Case remains open. Incident Report 893. Date: March 7, 2021. Ranger stationed at Outpost 7 reported unusual activity during night shift. Ranger claimed to have heard knocking at the door of the outpost at approximately 3 in the morning. Knocking continued for several minutes, despite Ranger's calls asking the visitor to identify themselves. Ranger did not open the door. At approximately 4 in the morning, Ranger heard what sounded like multiple voices whispering outside the outpost. Voices appeared to be saying Ranger's name repeatedly. At dawn, Ranger exited outpost to investigate. Footprints were found surrounding the building. Footprints were human in shape but oddly proportioned. Ranger has requested transfer to another location. Transfer pending approval. Incident Report 912. Date: August 23, 2021. Aerial survey of interior forest regions conducted following reports of unusual light phenomena. Survey revealed nothing unusual in the areas of interest. However, pilot reported experiencing feelings of disorientation and unease while flying over grid reference Delta 48. Instruments malfunctioned briefly during this period. Upon review of flight recording, analysis team noted a brief period of static lasting approximately 14 seconds. Audio captured during this period has been enhanced and appears to contain human voices, although the words cannot be clearly distinguished. Further analysis requested. Incident report 957. Date November 1, 2022. Mass disappearance event. Hiking group of 7 individuals failed to return from scheduled overnight trip. Search teams dispatched immediately. After 3 days of searching, all personal belongings of the group were discovered at a campsite approximately 4 miles from the trailhead. Belongings were neatly arranged with no signs of struggle or distress. Group members were never found. Case has been classified and removed from public records. No further information available. End of appendix. This document contains information that is classified at the highest levels. Unauthorized distribution is prohibited. All personnel who have read this document are required to submit to psychological evaluation within 30 days. Remember, the forest is always listening. The town is always waiting, and they are all